back to the fundamental nature of space-time. Let me ask you, because we're kind of left it. I'd like to go back to this idea of that you said that everything we think, say, or do occurs within the bounds of space-time. So first of all, maybe you can comment on what do you mean in this context about space, time, but also about the nature of truth, like how much of all of this is knowable, how much of this is accessible to us humans, how much uncertainty, like what we're talking about, is there in the world? Do you fall in a place where we can reason deeply about this world and it's knowable, or is it mostly chaos and we're just holding on for dear life?
Yeah, I think I said that all action occurs within the bounds of space-time. The other thing, everything we say, do, or make, the other thing is that everything we say, do, or make starts out as an idea. So there's this concept of universal Darwinism, which basically applies Darwinian principles, but outside of the biological sphere. So we could say that this kind of gets into Richard Dawkins' memetics, that even ideas are competing, reproducing, recombining.
That idea is so powerful, by the way. I don't think it's been understood fully. I think in the digital, in the 21st century, in the digital world, from my perspective, in artificial intelligence, there's yet to be some profound things to be discovered about this whole construct.
Yeah. Agreed completely. It's been called an acid, actually, and that it strips away all of the non-informational components of something, just strips it down to its bare bones. I have a quote in here somewhere about that, but
sorry, which is called an asset? The ideas?
The universal Darwinism.
Darwinism applied broadly, outside of the...
Applied broadly, and I'll condition all of this with saying that most of my thinking is shaped by a book I read recently called The Case Against Reality, which introduced me to this concept, but it tied into Darwinism that I've used more broadly in the past, looking at things like money and economics. So the book, The Case Against Reality by Donald Hoffman, he has a quote in the book that describes universal Darwinism. It says, quote, "Universal Darwinism can, without risk of refuting itself, address our key question. Does natural selection favor true perceptions? If the answer happens to be no, then it hasn't shot itself in the foot. The uncanny power of universal Darwinism has been likened by the philosopher Dan Dennett to a universal acid." And Dan Dennett says, quote, "There is no denying at this point that Darwin's idea is a universal solvent, capable of cutting right to the heart of everything in sight. The question is, what does it leave behind? I have tried to show that once it passes through everything, we are left with stronger, sounder versions of our most important ideas. Some of the traditional details perish, and some of these are losses to be regretted, but good riddance to the rest of them. What remains is more than enough to build on," unquote. So the way I would interpret that is that life itself, I've come to view life as information propagating through flesh. And that we are, I guess, DNA is a quadratic code. I think it's 4 letters maybe versus a binary, zeros and ones. And we are ideas, we are strategies competing with each other. And nature is that which selects. It's what selects the winning ideas, the ones that are most fit to environmental conditions, frankly.
You know, talking about sovereignty and individualism, there might need to be some rethinking here about what is actually the basic individual entity that is to be sovereign. Like maybe our biological meat vehicles, we're like way overly attached to them. Like maybe especially with genetics and all those kinds of things, or artificial intelligence, or living more and more in virtual worlds, will become detached from that kind of idea. So for example, if I can clone you, you know, make 1 million robbers, and you know, but you'll all have the same idea. What is your real value? Like I could just shoot you and there'll still be 999 of you, but the idea is the important thing.
Yeah.
The things you believe. So
I would argue that, I don't know, even if you clone someone perfectly, I don't think you can reproduce the individual themselves, because we're all a product of nature and nurture, right? So my particular concourse of experiences the path dependence that I represent cannot be replicated, nor can anyone's for that matter.
Well, that's a hypothesis. So
True.
that's of course a human meat bag would say.
Good
So
point.
so like desperately trying to preserve himself. I think it reduces to some fundamental questions about what is consciousness and whether that can be cloned. All those it gets to the core of what it is to be human. What are the things that make you particularly you?
Yeah, I think it would assume kind of a materialist viewpoint on reality, and that if you could reproduce every atom of an individual, that you would have their experience encapsulated in that. And, Hoffman's, which is the book, is very radical. He argues that space and time is not an objective reality. It's a biological interface. So we are scanning our environment for fitness payoffs. And this space and time is the rendering specific to human beings that allows us to navigate reality effectively. So the further argument would be that we all have pretty similar interfaces, but they're all slightly different too, because we're all, adapting in different ways, and that different animals have their own unique interfaces. So we have a certain amount of photoreceptors in our eye, whereas I think the number's 3, might be 5, whereas something like the mantis shrimp has like 7 or 9. So they can see, and we only see 1/10 trillionth of the light spectrum. So talk about a tiny fraction. I mean, 1/10 trillionth is a very minuscule number, and that makes up all of the light that we can interpret with our eyes. But something like a mantis shrimp could see, much more of that. So I think there's we're very conditioned to have a fully materialist viewpoint on reality today, where we think, the atomic clockwork kind of universe. But I don't think that's true exactly. And another school that goes into that is actually Austrian Economics, where we could say that, we mentioned earlier that an asset is not property. It's actually based on the relationship between the individual and the property. There's this whole realm of relevance associated with, we're all moving through life in the course of a goal-directed action. So when we walk across a room, I go from A to B. It's because I valued B more than A. Mm-hmm. So value is inseparable from human action. We have a rank-ordered value system in our mind, each of us, and we're constantly taking action in accordance with those rank values. Anything that accelerates us on the course of our goal-directed action towards our goal is useful. Anything that impedes us, or we could say is valuable, anything that impedes us is actually obstructing to value, and anything that's irrelevant is just valueless. So this table that we're using right now, like it's an accessory to you and I, because it's holding this paper that's holding the information that's guiding our conversation. Mm-hmm. But we could pay someone $100 to jump over this table, and this table could simultaneously be an accessory to you and I and an obstacle to someone else. So it's this domain, this silent contention of willpower and agendas occurring across the face of the earth that is what Austrian Economics really looks at. It's the realm of human action, as they call it. It's called Praxeology. So it's a non-materialist viewpoint on reality, in that we think in terms of matter being reality, but it's often more so in the sphere of human action, what matters. That is reality. It's the relevance of a thing to the course of one's goal-directed action.
And that's ultimately, it exists in the space of ideas.
Yes.
Not in the space of physical matter.
Yes. And just to jump back to this line here, I think his fundamental line here is, the question is, talking about universal Darwinism as an acid, what does it leave behind? I've tried to show that once it passes through everything, we're left with stronger, sounder versions of our most useful ideas. That's the key point to me. And that ideas and information, so far as we can tell, are the most fundamental substrate of reality. And information itself, back to entropy, information is the resolution of entropy. That's what the bit is, right? It's a 1 or 0. Whatever reduces your entropy by half is a bit, and we measure information in bits. So,
and you're right. People don't have ideas. Ideas have people. Honestly, it's a really profound idea. Or a statement about reality, a reframing of reality. Mm-hmm. it's if we're actually being deeply honest about it, it's quite painful.
Mhm.
I do appreciate that you defended your biological meat bag earlier, but it seems like ideas are the things that have power. That me, Lex, for example, is worthless, and relative to the ideas that used my brain for a bit of a time.
But so far as we know, only human beings can generate and share ideas. So you can't say Lux is worthless. Like you are the node of the idea sphere,
I'm
right? The noosphere. So
I'm I'm what is it from a Bitcoin perspective? I'm mining. I'm solving the cryptographic problem and generate.
you're
I'm a use in that sense. I'm a useful node.
yeah, you're competing to solve the puzzle of entropy, right? And when you do solve it, it benefits the entire network.